I'm Casey Martin and this is Beyond the Basics. Today we're talking about the Alabama rig. This is the first version. This is the version that originally came out back in 2011. It was introduced at the Walmart FLW Tour event on Lake Guntersville. And I actually got a tutorial from Paul Elias in that event. I fished with him as a co-angler. But you can see this is the first version. It came out with 5 wires. It's kind of beefy, kind of very simple. We had big jig heads, big swim baits, and we've kind of transitioned into some smaller finesse type Alabama rigs. And this is kind of the next generation here. You can see it's got 5 smaller wires, smaller blades, smaller heads. It can accommodate finesse style swim baits. And this type of bait, it can be thrown around laydowns, docks, wood, any type of things where you could throw a spinnerbait around. You could throw it over hydrilla beds and stuff like that on Lake Guntersville. And you can kind of see going from this type of rig to this, it's the next generation. Essentially, one of the key items when fishing this rig is your jig head and your swim bait. What you want to do is you want to make sure you put a dab of super glue just right under the head of the jig head. And then when you thread this swim bait on, you want to make sure it's evenly in the middle there so the hook comes right out in the middle. And then run it up over those keepers, and that super glue, when the fish bites, it'll keep it from pulling this down and it'll save you a few baits. So you can see on this one here, you can tell it's already been super glued, and you can't pull it down. When rigging these baits, you can see it has 5 snaps on it, real simple. Just take your swim bait head, run it through the snap, and rig it that way. Put 5 on and you're ready to go. So essentially the Alabama rig, when it first came out, it was designed to target suspending fish, and that's how Paul Elias caught his on Guntersville. And it actually made catching suspending fish a lot easier. Prior to that, we could throw crankbaits or little swim baits through them, but for whatever reason, the fish those suspended fish wouldn't react to it. But with the Alabama rig, you can target those suspended fish, and a lot of times those suspended fish are a lot bigger fish, and they were difficult to catch. And this rig's kind of changed the way we fish for suspended fish now. Back in the day when we would target a dock like this, you would hit it with either a jig or maybe throw a spinnerbait down the end, or maybe twitch a fluke off the end, and those fish that are suspended under those floats would come out and get them. But now essentially with the Alabama rig, and this is the newest thing, it's the smaller version, you can actually cast an Alabama rig around the ends of these docks, and you can get them to come out and chase and catch them off the ends of the docks. And with this smaller Alabama rig, this Finesse Alabama rig, throwing that 5 wire was near impossible because it was so heavy and so bulky. You really couldn't throw it around any specific targets. But with this, small Finesse rig, you can target areas that, like these docks here, the ends of docks, different laydowns. And so it's kind of opened up to the areas you can fish them just based on the new bait designs and, where you can throw them. In the past, prior to the Alabama rig, if you saw a laydown like this, we'd be, throwing a square bill up there, bumping it off, on the retrieve. We'd throw a spinnerbait along there in the fall and kind of slow roll it down that laydown. But now what everybody's doing is they'll take a Finesse Alabama rig like this and just kind of replace the crankbait and the spinnerbait and do the exact same thing, just cast to the laydown and just slow roll it. And a lot of those fish that you're catching off there are suspended fish. That laydown will be on that bank, but there'll be a drop there, and usually that fish is just sitting right at the end of that drop waiting for something to come by, an easy meal, and there's not really an easier meal than 5 baits. I guess another way to catch them out here is to, you see all this standing timber, it's old hardwoods that was in the lake before it filled up. And again, we'll be targeting suspended fish. There's a few limbs that stick out off these pieces of hardwood here, and those fish will suspend around those limbs, and you can reel this Finesse rig around or through those trees and get those suspended fish to react.
Rooster's a little late to the game.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
He's on Hawaii time.
This is going to be more target specific, like we're throwing around the laydowns and stuff like that. So I'm going to throw it on a smaller rod. This is a, you know, a 7-1 heavy. It actually, the rod tip will load up pretty good to be able to, you know, to be able to roll cast the smaller bait. But if you're throwing a large bait, you want the longest, stiffest rod possible. But if you're throwing a small one, you know, like a 7-foot heavy, 7-1 heavy, a little bit faster gear ratio. This is a 6-3 to 1. You want to be able to match your rod, reel, and line to the size of the Alabama rig you're throwing. The thing about the Alabama rig is that it catches larger than average fish, and that's a big key in tournament fishing. You're not going to go out and get 25 to 35 bites a day, but if you get 8 to 10 bites on the Alabama rig, they're going to be, you know, weighable fish, and that's what you need when you're tournament fishing.